All right, Commanders fans, buckle up because this is one of those stories that sounds like it belongs on a reality show more than an NFL offseason update, and yet here we are. Brandon Aiyuk, the wide receiver who has spent the last several months burning every single bridge he possibly can, has now apparently gone after the one person who was supposed to be his golden ticket out of San Francisco and into Washington, his own best friend, Commanders quarterback Jayden Daniels. If you've lost track of how many people Brandon Aiyuk has publicly feuded with this offseason, don't worry, you're not alone, because at this point it's basically become a running tally. But this one's different. This one might actually cost him his career. So let's break down exactly what happened, why it happened, and what it means for the Washington Commanders heading into training camp. First, a quick refresher for anyone who needs it, because Brandon Aiyuk's saga has had more twists than a soap opera. Aiyuk signed a 4-year, $120 million extension with the San Francisco 49ers back in August of 2024. Shortly after that, he tore his ACL, MECL, and meniscus, and things between him and the organization went south almost immediately. He reportedly didn't participate in his rehab the way the team wanted. The 49ers ended up voiding a chunk of his guaranteed money, and by December, San Francisco had placed him on the reserve left squad list after he stopped showing up to the facility altogether. Since then, Aiyuk has taken to social media again and again, calling out general manager John Lynch, calling out head coach Kyle Shanahan, calling out his own agent, calling out the NFL Players Association, and basically making it clear to anyone paying attention that he wants out of San Francisco and into Washington, specifically because his old Arizona State teammate and close friend Jayden Daniels is the Commanders' starting quarterback. And look, for a while, that actually seemed like a plan that could work. Reports had suggested that if Jayden Daniels wanted Aiyuk in Washington, the front office, led by general manager Adam Peters, who has ties to the 49ers organization himself, would likely go along with it, especially if it could be done on a cheap one-year prove-it type deal. Daniels reportedly did want his old college teammate on the roster. Everything seemed to be lining up. And then, this past weekend, Brandon Aiyuk decided to torch that plan himself. Here's exactly how it went down. Over the weekend, a video surfaced online of a 49ers fan approaching Jayden Daniels at a World Cup soccer match, repeatedly shouting profanity-laced insults about Brandon Aiyuk directly at him, essentially daring Daniels to not throw him the ball next season. Daniels' reaction? He laughed. He smiled, turned away, and completely diffused the situation, which frankly is exactly what you'd want your franchise quarterback to do when some random fan is trying to bait him into a viral moment. Nobody in their right mind expected Jayden Daniels to jump into the stands and start swinging fists to defend his buddy's honor over a heckler at a soccer game. That would have been the actual bad look here. But apparently Brandon Aiyuk did not see it that way. Instead of brushing it off the way any normal person would, Aiyuk unfollowed Jayden Daniels on Instagram and posted a series of videos calling him out directly. In one clip, Aiyuk essentially mocked Daniels for always laughing everything off and made comments suggesting Daniels needed to stop leaning so heavily on his mother, who also happens to be his agent. Before he'd take anything Daniels said seriously. Now, if you know anything about Jayden Daniels, you know how close he is with his mom. She's not just family support, she's literally representing him professionally. So for Brandon Aiyuk to bring her into this, in public, on a platform where millions of people can see it, that's not just trash talk between friends anymore. That's personal. That's the kind of comment that can actually damage a relationship, not just embarrass someone for a day. And here's the part that makes this whole thing even messier. Apparently, before any of this blew up publicly, Jayden Daniels had privately texted Brandon Aiyuk, essentially telling him in so many words that if he's going to be on this team, he needs to fall in line, stop with the social media antics, and let the front office handle things the professional way. Which, by the way, is exactly the advice basically every analyst, insider, and fan has been giving Brandon Aiyuk for weeks now. Instead of taking that advice from his best friend privately, Aiyuk turned around and put the whole exchange on blast publicly, framing it like Daniels was disrespecting him by trying to set boundaries. It's honestly hard to watch because from the outside, it looks like Daniels was trying to help his friend out of a hole, and Aiyuk responded by digging that hole even deeper. So, how did Jayden Daniels respond to being called out and having his mother dragged into a public social media spat? He didn't post a rant. He didn't fire back with paragraphs of his own. He simply posted a photo of NBA superstar Kevin Durant, who, fun fact, is apparently a Commanders fan himself, giving a double thumbs down to the camera. That's it. No caption, no explanation needed. And with the timing of everything, it was about as clear a signal as you could send that Daniels was not amused by any of this. Shortly after, it became clear that both men had unfollowed each other on Instagram entirely, which, if you know how Brandon Aiyuk operates on social media, is a pretty significant tell. This is a guy who reportedly only follows a small handful of accounts total, so when he's making moves like unfollowing people, it's rarely accidental. It's a message. But then, because this saga just refuses to end cleanly, Aiyuk turned around again and posted a picture of himself wearing Commanders gear and brand new cleats, apparently ones he'd already gotten in preparation for a potential run in Washington, telling Daniels to essentially, let's still make this happen. Let's still play together this year. So within the span of what felt like about 24 hours, Brandon Aiyuk went from calling out his best friend and dragging his mother into it to immediately turning back around and saying he still wants to suit up in Washington next to that same friend. If your head is spinning trying to follow the timeline here, congratulations. You're tracking this exactly as accurately as everyone else trying to make sense of it. Now, naturally, this being the internet, there's a whole other layer to this story, because at least one respected NFL insider has floated the idea that this entire beef might not even be real. The theory going around is that this could all be an elaborate bit. Two close friends messing with the public for entertainment, maybe even to generate buzz, and that behind the scenes, Aiyuk and Daniels are actually completely fine. It's a fun theory, and honestly, in the social media era, it's not the craziest idea in the world. But here's the thing. Even if that's true, even if this is all some inside joke between two guys who've known each other since college, it still doesn't look great. If Jayden Daniels, a young franchise quarterback trying to build a reputation as a serious, focused leader of this organization, is out here staging fake beefs on Instagram during the middle of the offseason just to mess with fans, that's still a questionable look. And if it's real, well, that's a whole different problem entirely. Because now you've got a star quarterback whose best friend just publicly disrespected his mother on the internet for the world to see. So which is it? Honestly, there's a real case to be made that this is genuine. The details line up a little too specifically, particularly the part about Daniels' mother, which feels like the kind of thing you don't joke about even between close friends. Especially not in a public forum with millions of eyes watching. Add in the fact that both players unfollowed each other, and it starts to feel like there's at least some real frustration underneath all of this, even if cooler heads eventually prevail. Now let's zoom out here, because at the end of the day, this entire soap opera circles back to one central question for us as Commanders fans. Should Washington even want Brandon Aiyuk on this roster after all of this? Let's be honest about what we're looking at here. This is a receiver who before his injury was legitimately excellent, a guy who racked up over 1,300 yards and 7 touchdowns back in 2023 and helped push the 49ers to a Super Bowl appearance. When healthy and locked in, Brandon Aiyuk is a legitimate difference maker, the kind of receiver who could genuinely elevate an offense that, outside of Terry McLaurin, doesn't have a ton of proven playmakers for Jayden Daniels to throw to. On pure talent, adding Aiyuk to a room built around McLaurin would be a real upgrade. But talent has never really been the question with Brandon Aiyuk this offseason. The question has always been about what's going on in his head, and honestly, watching this unfold week after week, it's getting harder and harder to feel good about the answer. This is a man who has walked away from $27 million in guaranteed money, who might have to give back over $18 million in signing bonus money just to force his way out of San Francisco, who reportedly still has an outstanding warrant tied to an old speeding ticket, who hasn't even hired a new agent after firing his last one, and who hasn't filed the paperwork with the league to get himself reinstated from the reserve list in the first place. And now, on top of all of that, he's picking fights with the one person in the entire NFL who was actually in his corner. The one guy who could have smoothed things over with Washington's front office and vouched for him despite everything else going on. Think about that for a second. Brandon Aiyuk has treated his friendship with Jayden Daniels almost like a get-out-of-jail-free card this entire time, banking on the idea that Daniels liking him personally would be enough to convince the Commanders to take a chance on a talented but risky player. And now he's actively torching that exact relationship over a heckler at a soccer match. If there's a more self-sabotaging sequence of events in recent NFL memory, it's hard to think of one off the top of my head. And that brings us to the alternative that a lot of Commanders fans, myself included, have been pushing for weeks now: Stefon Diggs. Here's a guy who put up over 1,000 receiving yards last season on a team that made a Super Bowl run, who's been open about wanting to play in Washington, who grew up right here in the DMV area, who played his college ball at Maryland, and who has reportedly already been spotted working out with Commanders branded footballs. Every organization Diggs has played for has talked about how professional he is once he's actually in the building. Even if he's got a bit of a flashy personality off the field, he's not walking in with a mountain of off-field drama. He's not coming off a serious knee injury. He's just a proven, hungry veteran who wants to win and wants to do it in Washington specifically. With the Commanders reportedly sitting on one of the largest amounts of available cap space in the entire league right now, there's really no excuse for why this move hasn't happened yet. So where does all of this leave us heading into training camp? Honestly, it leaves Brandon Aiyuk's path to Washington looking shakier than it has at any point this offseason. The entire foundation of a potential Commanders and Aiyuk marriage was built on the strength of his friendship with Jayden Daniels. Take that away, or even just put a serious crack in it, and there's no longer an obvious reason for this front office to take on all that risk. Multiple league insiders have already suggested that Aiyuk may have permanently damaged his own free agency market with this latest round of antics, and it's genuinely hard to argue with that read after everything we just walked through. For the Washington Commanders specifically, the message here should be pretty clear. This is a team with real championship aspirations after last year's magical playoff run, a team that cannot afford to bring in unnecessary distractions or locker room question marks heading into a season where expectations are through the roof. If Brandon Aiyuk is willing to publicly call out and disrespect his own best friend over something as minor as a laugh at a heckler, it's fair to wonder what happens the first time he's not getting the ball as much as he wants during an actual regular season game. That's not the kind of variable a serious, focused organization should want to introduce into their locker room right now, no matter how much raw talent comes attached to it. We'll obviously keep tracking every single development in this story as it continues to play out, because knowing Brandon Aiyuk's track record this offseason, this almost certainly is not the last chapter. Whether the Commanders ultimately end up taking the gamble, whether they pivot toward a steadier veteran option like Stefon Diggs, or whether Brandon Aiyuk manages to talk his way out of yet another self-inflicted mess, we are going to bring you the latest right here as soon as it happens. If you enjoyed this breakdown, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps get this content in front of more Commanders fans just like you. Drop a comment down below and let me know your honest take. Do you think this Aiyuk and Daniels beef is real? Or do you think it's all just an act between two old friends messing with the internet? And more importantly, should the Commanders still pursue Brandon Aiyuk after all of this? Or is it finally time to move on and go all in on Stefon Diggs instead? I want to hear it. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, because we've got a ton more coverage coming your way as we get closer to Commanders training camp. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.